All right. Looks like the stream is up. Looks like it's all working. So today, big deal. What we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be reading live the Reddit AMA, the post-launch Reddit AMA. So if we take a look right here, it's not started yet. We still got a couple more minutes here. Let's see. We got about 7 minutes here before it's supposed to get started. This is the official Dune Awakening launch AMA with Funcom development team June 19th. Hey everyone, Dune Awakening just fully launched on Steam 10th. We want to extend our heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you for joining us on Arrakis, the awesome reception, and your patience as we target and deal with issues we've faced so far. To celebrate the launch and answer some popular questions, we're hosting an AMA tomorrow, June 19th, between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. CEST. Joining us and answering your questions are Rui Casais, Chief Executive Officer, Joel Bylos, Creative Director. This is the person I believe you always see wearing the sandals and the like board shorts during the live streams. And then we have the executive producer, Scott Jr. We'll be using this thread to answer as many questions as possible tomorrow from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. CEST. So go ahead, drop the questions you'd like us to answer now. We strongly suggest you check the thread before asking questions to see if it was asked before, and if so, upvote that. By upvoting a similar question to yours, you increase the chance. Wow, I'm having trouble talking this morning. Increase the chances of us responding. Okay, chances of us responding it and help discover the questions that more of the community is curious about. Fantastic. So that one was just worded a little weird. It wasn't just that I can't read, it was also worded weird. We have some interesting questions that people have been asking. I honestly am interested in a lot of different stuff, apparently, than the remainder of the community. A lot of these are getting upvoted. Things like the dailies and weeklies and stuff like that. I really hope they don't do this because I got enough time, or I have enough trouble continuing to grind out materials. If I also had to do daily and weekly contracts, I would lose my flipping mind. I had deposit all water option. Yeah, this is a big one for me. I've posted about this on Reddit before. Please give us a deposit and extract all. Yeah, deposit and extract all on the water options would be fantastic. My neighbor has a super loud car apparently. They think it's super cool to jump in there and rev it up right now. That's super dope. Really just don't like people. That's where I'm at. They just be trying to make me mad. I want to go double check here. I'm pretty sure I read the AMA event time right. Yeah, 10 a.m. Eastern is 8 a.m. Mountain. That's happening in like 3 minutes. If you want to go to the AMA, just go down to, there's a link in my description on YouTube. I think there's a link in my description on YouTube. Gosh, I hope so. If not, I'll add it after the AMA or after the stream because we're only going to stream for about 2.5, 3 hours. It'll take a little while to get through the questions after they finish answering them. especially because I really like to pontificate as they go through and start answering questions. You'll also have to contend with my extremely long winded opinions about those answers. But I really love AMAs. I really love AMAs because they're so much better. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. They're so much better, in my opinion, than um, an interview. Right? Interviews could always just be informative uh, videos. Right? The interviewer isn't really adding anything to the equation. Um, as far as the information being provided. Now, they are adding something to the equation in, their opinions and in their personalities and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. Um, but when it comes to just information getting disseminated, I love AMAs because of the format, right? Everybody gets on, collectively asks a bunch of questions. The voting system really helps nail down what's most important to the community. And then we have people come on and very sort of candidly answer questions because they're not getting necessarily the ability to curate the questions they're getting asked quite as well as they could if they were doing an interview, right? Because when you do an interview with a company like Funcom or something like that, um, they don't just schedule the interview and then show up and let you ask a bunch of questions. You have to send in your questions and tell them, like, here are the things that we want to talk about. Here are the questions I'm going to ask you. Here are the topics we're going to discuss. And they're going to tell you, like, hey, we're not going to discuss this topic. We're not going to discuss this topic. We're not going to discuss this topic. And it's true that in an AMA situation, they could just not answer a question if they wanted to, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But they're not getting to prepare for that nearly as far in advance. And there is significantly more pressure from the community. If you've got a really popular question in here, like this one that's got 570 upvotes, um, if the community is asking this question and maybe you got 5,000 upvotes or something like that, and it was obviously just the most important question to the community, um, then in the moment they might change their mind. But if it's just an interview, it's just some nerd, right? Like, whoever the person is doing the interview is the only pressure really that you have to answer that question. And that person is already prepared and expecting to acquiesce to, your demands about what you do and do not want to talk about. So I love the AMA format. I think it's a great use of Reddit. It is 8:01 now, so we should hopefully start getting some answered questions soon. I am very excited about this. Very, very excited. Oh, hey, look, it's changed. We're getting answers from Joel Bylos, the creative director. We're getting answers from Scott Jr., the executive producer. It looks like the CEO is not going to be there. We got VR Sommerbach, the senior game director. This person was actually there last time for the AMA before. And then we've got Oli Andreas Haley. The lead producer, I think that's Oli, is how you pronounce that. I'm from southern New Mexico, so my brain really wanted to pronounce that Ole instead of Oli. But yeah, we got some different peeps. Now my YouTube description is wrong, and I look like a dum dum. All right, it did say live 2 minutes ago. Fantastic. So hopefully, we ought to start getting some answers to the community's burning questions. Obviously, it takes a minute or two for people to type out the answers, which is good, right? I'm sure they're probably all sitting around talking to each other, maybe in a Discord call or, something like that, making sure that they don't all answer the same questions. Oh, one new answer. Oop, give it to me. All right. Will you be looking at a change so we can name storage containers? Definitely, that is on the list of changes we want to make to improve base/resource management. I can't commit to exactly when this is coming, but we understand the difficulty in managing huge bases with tons of storage containers. This is huge. Also, if we could rename circuits, right, instead of just circuit 1, um, circuit 2, circuit 3, whatever, if we could rename circuits so that we could have like the ornithopter circuit or, the plastanium circuit or whatever. That would be super, super cool. Very exciting answer. But it does sound like they're looking more into that, and they've already done some really great stuff with the game um, as far as helping us keep things organized. So I think we'll be good there. Let's take a look here. Once you do all the contracts in Haga, there aren't any more quests to do. Are there any plans on adding repeatable/new contracts every Coriolis storm, or are we just supposed to do with the not very engaging Landsrad tasks? Wow, shots fired. I think the Landsrad tasks are super cool. Yes, there are plans to add new contracts across the board. In addition, the Landsrad itself is supposed to involve more contracts in order to reveal tasks for the houses, as well as contracts that lead into the deep desert. Okay, so this is cool. This is actually something uh, that a lot of people have been talking about, and that I absolutely agree with. Is that the deep desert and the Landsrad system don't quite feel finished. For example, I was trying to figure out how to get the major houses, the representatives, to explain to me what they wanted that week at the beginning of this week, and I couldn't figure it out. They all wanted 300 spice melange to give me access to their information early. And it just wasn't working the way I thought it was supposed to work. I thought you were supposed to convince them to give you that information. And it looks like, in fact, that is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to apparently do contracts for them in order to accomplish that. So, very excited to see this change. Um, let's see. It said we had one more answer, but then I didn't get anything. Plans add new contracts, names for storage containers. Vehicle naming is also something that we will be coming out, that will be coming to help out with management of inventory and bases. This will appear in the inventory dropdown in the base so you know which vehicle you are taking resources from. Fantastic. Fantastic. I I really, really like to see that adding names to things. Like I don't give a crap, right? I played a lot of Ark. I don't care about like naming my dinosaurs or whatever dumb crap. Um, I know there are lots of people out there who do. Sorry, I don't mean to actually say that it's dumb to name your dinosaurs. I understand there's lots of people out there who find that interesting. So by all means, name your dinosaurs. But that stuff doesn't matter to me. But it does matter to me when it comes to organizing and stuff like that. Naming containers, naming my vehicles so I can find them more easily. These are going to be really important things. So I really, really appreciate that specific change. And also, I'm glad to see this. This is coming was answered not too long ago. I really hope this is quick because I click a couple thousand times a day depositing and moving my water. I need I need another button to deposit all. All right. Come on, baby. Give me another answer. What do we got? Let's hit the old refresh button and see what happens. So back to answered. All right, here we go. Will you change Landsrat so players can continue to contribute to it after it has been claimed? I understand why you would want this, and I understand why you wouldn't. So let's see. Our current plan is to allow your contributions to stack week after week so that small groups and solos can work towards larger rewards over time, and then adding more tiers of rewards as well as new activity drivers in the Landsrat. This is a solution I didn't think of. This is actually fantastic. Now, there is no way currently, as far as I remember, to see how much you personally have put in to a certain house. But I love this idea, right? Being able to add more tiers of rewards is awesome. Allowing that to stack every week is awesome. So it seems to me then that I thought that every week the schematics and stuff you were going to get were going to change. So it looks like probably that's not what's going to happen if they're planning on doing this. The schematics and stuff that you were going to get would have to stay the same every week. But I love that they're going to be adding something that makes that more manageable. I was enjoying that I was getting a little notification whenever somebody answered a question. But now I'm not getting that notification. And it's making me sad. I'm going to have to keep hitting the F5 button, which means I'm going to have to keep scrolling through questions we've already looked at. So far, Gravy, we've talked about new contracts. They're talking about having contracts just to open up the house tasks, which is cool. They're going to be adding some naming for containers and vehicles. Most of it's about endgame, though. Most of it's about the lands rad and the deep desert. Will we ever be able to stack storage boxes? I don't see an answer there. I don't know why it's in the answers. Add deposit all, change land rad. Okay, we've already answered all those. So there's supposed to be a new answer, though. Let's go ahead and hit these answered questions. What quality of life plans do you have in the pipeline? What are the PVE plans for the near future? We have an update in testing that contains a lot of quality of life updates, which we are aiming to release in early July. When we get closer to it being publicly testable, we will release the full patch notes. It contains too many changes for me to list here, but you'll be seeing it soon. For PVE plans for the future, each of our major updates will always continue new story content and new PvE content, which will release at the same time as our DLCs come out. Our goal is to have these releases every 3 to 4 months. I did not realize that they planned on releasing content that quickly. 3 to 4 months is actually an insane rate to be dropping new content. Will we ever be able to stack storage boxes? There are ways to do this already. Using half walls to create shelves, we are continuously looking into ways to improve quality of life, and stacking storage boxes is on that list. Yeah, just let me stack them on top of each other. So, and let's get some snapping. You know what I mean? The grid snapping is just grid snapping and snapping to other objects that you're building, right? Ark Survival Ascended already did it. Once Human did it, right? This technology is out there, and it's a huge boon for builders who are looking to optimize their space and keep everything as neat and tidy. Um, no, people did ask for the extract all water button, and it's already been answered by somebody else. I don't think the team answered, but apparently they had already put out some information that they're going to get a deposit all and extract all. The devs are actually fairly active here on the Reddit, so a lot of that stuff gets answered by devs. Yeah, well, I mean, we're still going to have to do that for a while. I don't know how long it'll take. I would imagine that quality of life update that they said is coming out early July, that's probably as early as we'll see that, if at all, or if that early even. So hopefully we can survive until July. I'm tired of clicking thousands of times every day. It's gonna kill my hands. Gonna kill my hands. So far, this is the big one for me, though. Yes, there are plans to add new contracts across the board. In addition to the Landsrat itself, it's supposed to involve more contracts in order to reveal tasks for the houses. This is huge. Because right now, the Landsrat is pretty random, right? You get the new information every day about, what tasks and stuff are available. But if you can go through and choose a task, right? Pick one of the houses, go find their house representative, do a quick task for them, and unlock the ability to know what their task is, right? This becomes a race now to get the best tiles. Now there do need to be some changes made to how the faction system works currently. The faction system is broken horribly. And so as things stand now, the best option for a world is for everybody just to join the same faction and then PvP as like guild versus guild. And that just doesn't really do anything. So, all right, we've already read this one. Already read that one. Read that one. Read that one. Read that one. Are there any plans to make building easier, like being able to replace one floor for another without having to move everything and destroy the current floor? This is a big one. I know this is something that's done in Conan Exiles, and it would be great to see it here too. Yes, we're planning to add the option to replace one piece with another without having to destroy it first. I would have liked to have seen something a little more in depth there, right? Because they said building quality of life in general, and then all they did was answer the one example they gave. I'd like to see, again, we've got snapping, we've got all kinds of stuff. The building system in this game, while they've got a lot of tiles, and while they're one of the few games I've ever seen that has multi-tile pieces, I don't I don't really think that the basic functionality of this building system is as good as a lot of others. Will there be a roadmap published soon, like other games such as Satisfactory or Valheim? What kind of quality of life plans will there be? Will there be other decoration/building packs released soon? Yes, we intend to keep you in the loop on what's coming, and we'll share our mid to long term plans soon. However, they may not take the form of a static roadmap asset. I'm totally okay with that. Saw a video of two big streamers in ornithopter combat. I would be completely lost in such a fight since there's no way of knowing if it's an ally or enemy. I mean, but that's kind of the point, right? Is if you're in a Zerg, and I make all of my ornithopters look like all of your ornithopters, then the likelihood that I kill one of my allies is much less than the likelihood that you kill one of yours. Do you plan to add daily, weekly contracts? Okay, so this is kind of a new one. Do you plan to add daily, weekly contracts for PvE solo players? They kind of answered this. Currently, we have the Landsrad to offer weekly content for players to engage with. We have read the feedback about some tasks getting locked early, tasks being too hard for solo players, and feedback on the general rewards. We will make improvements to all of these features to make sure that anyone that wants to engage with the Landsrad can, and that they feel like the rewards are worth it. In addition, we will be releasing more PvE content with each major update, and we will have more dynamic encounters in the game that will offer variety and new content for you to discover as you're exploring Arrakis. Again, this is fantastic, and the PvE content in this game is actually really fun. So I look forward to seeing what else is going to be on offer in the future. We already read that one. Here we go. Can we get a deep desert zone for only on-foot combat? Feels like it's just air combat at the moment, creating a mode where only bikes and buggy are allowed. Also, can we get more dungeons within Deep Desert with a variety of bosses and targeted loot farm systems? I hate this question. Where players can select loot they want to drop. Yeah, I don't really... Like, they're trying to turn this into WoW, and it's just not. No, this is not the plan. However, a lot of our adjustments and balancing are going to drive combat towards the core vision, which is people competing over points of interest in the deep desert. The current balance between vehicles and on foot is not tuned to our liking. There are multiple changes in the pipeline to address this. Above and beyond bugs we will fix. We will continue to add dungeons, but we will not add targeted loot systems, as the entire point of the deep desert is the randomization and re-exploration loop, and this would work entirely against that. I like this. This is a great answer. Fantastic job, Joel. Yeah, it was fun to watch, but I would just be confused. There's a decree which makes PvP full loot drop for the week. Yeah, absolutely. Right of salvage. That is, I think, a really cool thing to have as a decree. I don't ever want to go out into PvP while that's a decree, but I think it is a cool decree to have. Will we be able to ever stack storage boxes? Are there any plans to make building easier? Can you please get a deposit all option? Will there be a roadmap? All right, fantastic. So looking at this, they've actually already made some changes here. You can no longer deal damage to players with vehicles. So this was apparently a big deal in the deep desert. And actually somebody did it to me as well, where you just crash into somebody and smash them with your ornithopter and knock them down over and over and over again. so they really can't do anything. So I like to see that they're not liking the way things are balanced right now. We need we need some ability to do stuff to flying vehicles, no matter what weapon we're using. Right? I should be able to break out my machine gun. Right? I have one of those machine guns, the Vulcans. I should totally be able to break out my Vulcan and just start ripping into an ornithopter. And yeah, maybe it's going to take a few magazines, right? A couple hundred rounds, but I should be able to just rip into an ornithopter with 1,000 darts and then knock it down. And we also have shoulder fired rockets, which I also really want to see. I'm very excited for shoulder fired rockets. Let's go ahead and hit the refresh here. See if we can't get some new questions. Quality of life. Do you plan on adding weekly contracts? Contracts in Haga Basin. Will you change the lands rad? Will you be looking at changes for some storage containers? Deep desert zone for foot combat. Will we ever be able to stack boxes? Make building easier. Deposit all water option. Will there be a roadmap? Okay. So we're taking a little time here to answer some questions, which I'm okay with. I like that they seem to be, especially so Joel is really good and has been doing a really good job for a long time about giving well organized and well thought out responses. I don't necessarily always like the content of his responses because for some reason Funcom really like to obfuscate their plans and not let us know what's happening until it happens. Actually, not for some reason, because it maintains a little bit of mystery in the game. And honestly, I kind of like it. Once stuff comes out and I get to discover things, I'm happy. But while I'm asking questions and not getting answers, it kind of makes me angry. So, but I like that they don't just seem to throw stuff out there willy nilly. I like that they seem to not just throw stuff out there willy nilly. Um, the old refresh again. I really like doing these streams. Um, I think this is just phenomenal content. I will probably go through and also just do a quick video of the ones that I think are most important. Just go through and read. So I'll probably do this live stream, then I'll go through and do a video, and then I'll probably get back on and live stream some more and play the game. You change lands rad. Will you be looking to change storage containers? Can we get some deep desert storage? Plans to make building easier. Here we go. Will you be looking at a change that allows us to take a corpse from a storage box and place it directly into a death still? At the moment, it's not possible. However, I'd be happy if you limited it to the proximity of the death still, as we tend to have a storage container full of corpses right next to death stills. My friend, the intentionality of lifting a corpse and placing it in the sacred machine known as the death still is a ritual that must be honored with contemplation of each and every victim that you place within. I was a friend of Jameis Bilakefa. Also, death stills are an insanely rewarding way to get water, and we feel that the current design is in line with convenience given by the automated machinery. There's a core difference between Fremen technology and Chom technology, and corpses are not compatible with the circuit systems. Oh my god. This is hilarious. Corpses are not compatible with the circuit systems. I love that. And it's suiting thunder and laughter is the name of the question asker. That's hilarious. That might be one of the funniest things I've ever read in my entire life. Good times. Good freaking times. Man, my allergies are acting up so much this morning. I am not a happy camper. All right, what do we got? Is there going to be a PvE only option for people to farm endgame materials, or is it always going to be something you gate behind PvP? Our plan is for the Landsrad to be the endgame PvE content, so we will continue to make adjustments to that feature until both you and we are happy with it. It should feel rewarding for both solo and guild players, and offer personal rewards in addition to faction wide map rewards. In addition, we will have new PvE maps and content in the future that will offer alternative ways to progress past the gear that is available in Haga Basin. So, something that they've said in the past is that the Deep Desert will always have the best gear. So, as they put out new content and new PvE zones and stuff like that, and those new zones, are going to obviously have power creep. And so you're probably going to get the Plastanium tier in, the next DLC or the DLC after that in some of the PvE areas. Then that's just going to mean that there's going to have to be a change to the Deep Desert to incorporate some higher tier of loot. But it seems like they want to keep the Deep Desert as sort of that peak tier. And that's weird saying, me being mostly a PvE player, lol. I don't like the concept of only PvP or PvE map. Yeah, I agree. This game, as soon as they make a couple of changes to the faction system to make the faction system more usable, we got a lot of new answers. I'm falling behind. But as soon as we get some changes to the faction system that make the faction system more usable, then the PvP zone won't feel nearly as daunting as it does now. Can we get a deep desert? Will we ever be able to stack storage boxes? Are there any plans to make building easier? We'd be looking at a change that allows you to take a corpse, add a deposit on water option, roadmap. Right now, respecking seems to remove your starting skill, but does not refund the skill point. So if you respec at level 150, you only get 149 skill points back. I know many players have reported this bug, but it has not been added to known issues on Discord yet, as far as I can see. What is the threshold for adding issues to known issues? Should we keep encouraging new players to report issues such as this until it gets added to known issues? Great question. The list of known issues is not exhaustive and does not capture every bug. We focus on the most common and impactful issues and update the list regularly. Regardless of whether a bug is on that list, we encourage players to report them. Bug reports provide valuable information that our QA teams use to fix issues and help us determine how many players might be affected. Definitely a bug. It will be fixed in an upcoming patch. Fantastic. Good quality answer. AMAs are so much fun. I know I said it at the beginning of this, but this format is just so good when it comes to providing information that the community really wants. Now, I know that the community isn't entirely represented by the Reddit community, right? There are definitely huge cross sections of the community that avoid Reddit. Um, and so, this isn't exactly the answers that the entire community might care about, but it is a pretty decent chunk of the community is represented by what goes on here. So between this and the Discord and, interviews with devs and streamers and all that stuff, we really do get a pretty nice, their Funcom's ability to put out information and their willingness to put out information is really, really nice. Someone from a different siege can come to ours to take our resources, right? Talking especially about vehicle modules. You mean like in our guild? Yeah, absolutely. They can go back to their siege with anything basically that fits in their backpack, in their personal inventory. So they can't, for example, like load down a carrier ornithopter or load down an assault ornithopter and fly it back. But yes, I actually did that yesterday. I made a whole aluminum set for one of the new players, Crazy Flip, and including an Orny and all his gear. And then I went to a different siege and delivered it to him myself. But they can totally come to our siege, use our materials, craft whatever, and then disappear out. Is one of the new folks needing some help with something? Did I miss a Discord message or something? Okay, we're looking good. Let's hit the refresh again. Go back to answered questions. Asking what level. Got it. Got it. I saw that. I appreciate that. Curious if there will be boss fights or raids or dungeons or any activities like that. By the way, game is fantastic and you've all done such an incredible job. We will continue to evolve our PvE content, including adding boss encounters as part of future dungeons. Thanks, glad you like it. It's weird to me that they plan on adding boss encounters. I wonder if they'll be like big boss encounters, like once human style, or if they'll just be like super strong individual enemies. That's interesting. Is there going to be any kind of in-game store for cosmetic items? So this is a big one, and I think most of you are going to like the answer. No, we don't currently have any plans to add an in-game store to sell cosmetic items. Joel talked about our business model shortly before launch. I think the only stuff that they're actually going to be selling are those season passes and those DLCs. Now, it is my understanding that some of those DLCs will strictly be cosmetic DLCs, and some of them will be content DLCs. So, yes, they are not going to have an in game shop, which means you're not going to be able to access that stuff and buy individual pieces and silly bullshit like that. Um, but that doesn't mean that they're not just going to be straight selling cosmetics, right? Because if a DLC is only a cosmetic DLC, then sure, there's no in game shop that's selling that, but it is still just a purchasable cosmetic content. So, but again, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with selling cosmetics. I would prefer not to have any sort of microtransactions or stuff like that for cosmetics. I would prefer anything that I purchase to be a content update. But that's just not the reality of the gaming world we live in today. So, all right, looks like we're going to be getting some new answers. Also, there are people who care about aesthetics and all that, so we will get some kind of cosmetics, I suppose. Yeah, there are people who, I mean, that's one of the most important things to them. If you look at a lot of MMO games, WoW and Final Fantasy 14 are two that really stand out. But fashion is like the entire end game of those games. Guild Wars 2 is the same way. Final comment in case of people building bases. Sorry, final comment on the case of people building bases to block off ground roads between resource areas, Vermilius Gap, quest areas, entrances, etc. would be nice. To which extent is it supposed to be allowed? When should it be reported? And when not, will quest related build forbidden areas be expanded or not, etc.? This one is hard to tackle in a way that makes everyone happy. There is a limited amount of buildable space in the game, so we don't want to add building blockers all over the map. We do want to make sure you can access content and points of interest that are unique or required for progression. So we have tried to ensure there is always a viable path to get to trade posts, faction bases, and story content locations. If we missed anything obvious, let us know. This is one of those questions that shouldn't even exist, right? Just don't build in the way of important shit. Don't don't block the only path anywhere. And not even that. Don't block the only path anywhere within a very small vicinity. So if there's two paths into a zone and one of them is on one side of the map and the other one's on the other side of the map, then don't block one of those and make people go all the way around. Right? If there's two entrances to a zone right next to each other and you block one of them, maybe I can get behind that. But don't block shit with your base, you absolute clown shoe. Stop it. That's a horrible, horrible thing to do. Let people play the gosh darn game. Is there going to be any kind of in-game store? Oh, we already read that one. Okay. Already read that one. Let's refresh again, see what comes up. Here we go. Are there plans for map expansion? Not saying there's an issue with the size. The map is quite big, but was purely curious if there are going to be any future map expand. So, we have many plans to expand the game with additional maps in the future, and the Overland map is one of our vehicles to do so. The Dune universe has a lot of interesting locations and worlds to explore, and we're looking forward to continuing to build on top of the foundation we have. Sorry, this is something they've alluded to in the past. Interesting locations and worlds to explore. So we have this world map, and the great thing about that world map is that it gives you the opportunity to sort of zoom out. Right? It sets a precedence where we're looking at a larger scale than just our play space. And so in the future, right, it seems like we might even get to leave Arrakis and go somewhere else, which would be super cool. Something that somebody in our guild actually was asking yesterday in our lore chat was asking about um, what uh, classes might come in the future, right? If they might add additional classes instead of just the Mentat, Swordmaster, Trooper, and Bene Gesserit. There are lots of different specialized types of people in Dune because after the war with the sentient machines, they started looking into how to improve people, right? Biological people, instead of relying on machines to do some of these special things that they needed done. So, improving physically, improving mentally, improving, just people in lots of different ways. And so they've ended up with lots of different types of people. And that's what your sword masters and your troopers and your Bene Gesserits and your Mentats and all those people are expressions of that evolutionary tinkering. And that's a big part of the Dune lore, but that's not all of them, right? You have the navigators, who are people who like fold space time to travel the giant ships up throughout the galaxy. And so there's a bunch of interesting stuff like that. So I'd love to see maybe the ability to learn uh, some navigator skills sort of on a low level, right? So we're not going to end up getting to probably have one of those huge ships that you see, the big circular ships in the sky, but they're going to have to give us some way to travel from planet to planet. No, I don't know exactly how lore accurate it would be, but maybe giving us the ability to fold just our ornithopter or something like that through space time to another planet could potentially be a way of going about that, and giving us a quest line to learn that ability might be fun. Again, the game is really, really focused on lore accuracy, and I don't know much about the Dune lore. So somebody else could probably see a better lore related way for that to work than I can. But hopefully there will be something in there. Because as the game grows, right, if we don't ever get any new classes, then things might get a little stale as far as your character progression is concerned. And I don't really want that. The contracts in Haga. Will you change the lands red? Will you be looking to change? We can name storage containers, deep desert zone. Ooh. Holy cow. All right. We got a big bad here from Upset Goal 8485. What are your plans to improve PvP? Right now, PvP feels meaningless. There's no real risk or reward. Killing someone on land only gives you a few lootable items. I think right out of the gate, I disagree with this. Killing someone on land only gives a few lootable items. The player keeps their gear and crafted items. Taking down someone in the air is fun, but all we get is a destroyed chopper, no real gain. When you die, you just respawn and jump back in. There's no consequence, and that removes all the intensity from PvP. They did just add a timer. When you die the first time, you're supposed to have a 70-second timer. And when you die a second time, and all the subsequent times, it's supposed to be like 115 seconds. That just got dropped yesterday, I think. That should be the core endgame experience, but right now it feels hollow. PvE quickly becomes repetitive with nothing more than farming and crafting. Can we introduce a meaningful ranking system? No. Faction control of territory influence. If it's faction based, I can get behind this. If it's guild based, you can kiss my butt. A smaller DD map size to increase player encounters. I don't like this either. And be able to loot crafted and farmed items. And I don't like that either. Me and this person disagree very much on what makes a meaningful PvP system. Can we consolidate sieges and servers to see people more frequently for PvE and PvP encounters? When are we going to fix the classes quests? Most people are having issues with finishing the classes quests due to journey issues and bugs. Planetologist is the class presenting the most problems. Yes, that's exactly right. This person is just a PvPer. Can the in-game notifications have the time associated with player or server time zone instead of UTC? Can we deposit all, extract all button for water? Can we increase the party size or remove friendly fire between guildmates? No. The current party size feels limiting, especially during larger coordinated fights. It would also make a big difference if friendly fire was disabled for guild members. It's frustrating accidentally damaging teammates during combat. That's the point. See, this person's all about PvP, and then the one unique thing about PvP in this game, they're like, no, we don't want this. Like, if you just want this game to be like Albion Online, go play Albion Online. I understand it's not the Dune IP, but that's what you're trying to turn the game into. Just go play that game. Go play Eve. Stop trying to take away the unique things about this game. Friendly fire is so fucking cool. So cool. Stop trying to get rid of it. Can the map filters be more granular and persistent? Right now, every time I open the map, I have to manually toggle filters. For example, I don't care about copper ore. I only want to see aluminum ore. It would be so much better if the map remembered my preferences. Can the radar top HUD be maybe dynamic as well? Instead of always showing POI distances, I prefer to customize what appears there. For example, I'd like the radar to only show the specific POIs or resources I care about based on my filter settings. This would reduce clutter and make exploration more efficient. Things don't have to be efficient, especially exploration. I understand wanting to efficiently get around the map, but I don't want to efficiently explore the map. Because if you can efficiently explore the map, then you're not really exploring. You're just you're uncovering. And that's not nearly as fun. Can we make it easier to distinguish between players and NPCs, especially in PvP areas? In fast-paced fights, it's often hard to tell who's a real player and who's an NPC. Also, can we make player names and guild tags more visible? There is no player name or guild tag. Quickly identifying allies, especially in large fights, would greatly improve clarity and reduce friendly fire or confusion. That's the point. Can we have an option to skip all dialogue and animations? Some players like myself are not into the lore or all this nonsense. We are here to play a survival game. It would be great if we had an option to skip all this. I agree with that. Can we remove that mini-map game between worlds? Such waste of development resources. The only reason this looks like a waste is that it's not necessarily being utilized 100% right now because we don't have new areas of the map to go to. So this, I love the open world or the world map. I think it's great. Can you make the map feature be able to toggle the map across the worlds and see party, or just toggle between worlds instead of restricting the map only to the player location? I like friendly fire even when just farming for spice. I always get scared seeing your Orny and have to make sure it's you. I think we need to color code our Ornies, the mix of different swatches, black hole, white wings, like that to mix it up. I agree, Gravy. We do need to get some people together who can decide on a uniform for us. And then we also, and I'll discuss this probably in the chat, but we need to come up with a signal, like a tipping of the wing or something like that we can use to identify each other. So a lot to address here. Yeah, let's talk about this. I'll try to keep my answers short and to the point. What are your plans to improve PvP? We have a lot of plans to address your points about respawn times and revives. Full loot is a decree that can be obtained via the Landsrad, so compete there if you want to make it a reality. There are control points in the deep desert already. We have no plans to reduce the deep desert size. As we work on the game, we will continue to work on making PvP more rewarding. I'm sure you will note I am not being very concrete about that, is because we are planning on watching how people are playing and finding the right points to address. Very politician-like answer there. Can we consolidate sieges? We will do this when we feel it's necessary. Can the in-game notifications have the time associated? Yes, this is being improved. When are we going to fix the classes quests? We're making multiple improvements. Yeah, this is just an asshole question. When are we going to improve the classes quests? Like, obviously they're fixing them. Obviously it's an important thing. It will be fixed as quickly as possible, and asking for a timeline is just a passive aggressive way of saying, why isn't this fixed yet? So that's a big dick move right there. Can we deposit all? We're working on it. Can we increase the party size? No, this is the party size we've chosen for the game, and our encounters in PvE are balanced towards this. Changing it is not in the plans. We also expect guilds to coordinate and work together. Friendly Fire is there to ensure that they do. I love it. Can the map filters be more granular and persistent? We'll look into this. Can the radar top HUD be made dynamic as well? No, this is not planned and is very expensive to implement and change. Can we make it easier to distinguish between players and NPCs? No, this is in line with the vision of the game. Nice. Can we have an option to skip all dialogue and animation? Absolutely not. It is clear from your question that you value efficiency above all else, but the vision of the game is to value Dune above all else. So no. Okay. I mean, that's a totally reasonable response. I'm still going to just skip through everything. But at least they have a reason for why they won't ever give us that or that ability. Can we remove that mini-map? No, this is also in line with the vision of the game. Yeah, of course they're not going to remove that. Can you make the map feature be able to toggle? No, we have no plans to implement this. It would add a lot of server overhead. It is absolutely not worth it. Fantastic. Good answers there, Joel. Fantastic job. That was a big one. There have been a lot of answers that have come out. So let's see. TV only option, no. Final comment. Is there going to be any kind of game store? Okay. We've already read all these. Let's refresh. Let's go back. Let's find some more. We ought to have a lot of stuff to look at because that was a big old long answer. Change Landsrad. Looking to change naming containers. Okay, are there any plans to implement something like faction-based warfare in the deep desert? With a war map and such, PvP in deep desert is a big issue at the moment, as it is almost entirely aircraft-based, free-for-all. I do not mind having aircraft being able to fight, but would like to see something to encourage more ground combat, to make use of all the skills and gear we have for such things. The deep desert will always stay a PvP free-for-all area, but we might consider adding other locations that offer factional warfare. Okay, this one I don't like. This answer is, in my opinion, extremely bad. I don't want what this person is explaining, right? I don't want to not be able to kill members of my faction. And this is a big thing that a lot of people are pushing for. And I think that this is the wrong solution. We don't want to stop having friendly fire in our faction, but we want to encourage faction politics. Because right now, the faction system doesn't even mean anything. Because everybody in your server can just be the same faction. And then everybody gets the Landsrad benefit. And then you still just kill each other in the deep desert. So the faction system is currently not adding anything at all to the game environment. And so you have to do something that encourages people to spread out among the factions and to legitimately cooperate and compete. You've made it too much of a sandbox at this point. And so this stance, where it's always going to be a free-for-all, is just the stance that we don't care if you join a faction. Right? This is bad. And so I mentioned this in a video I made recently, and I'll say it again, and I said it earlier in this same stream. You need to have a penalty for killing members of your own faction, right? Because the way the structure appears to me is you have major houses, right? You have the Harkonnen and you have the Atreides. These are major houses in the game. And when you make a guild and align yourself to one of these factions, you basically become a minor house under this major house. And so if I kill a member of another Atreides guild, then I am reducing the military power of the Atreides major house on Arrakis. And so naturally, the Atreides leadership would take offense to that. And so there should be some sort of reparations that I have to pay every time I kill an allied faction member. And if I don't pay those reparations, then I should lose access to the decree for that week or something, right? Maybe it could just be added to my taxes for my base. But if they do that, then there are obviously lots of people who won't have bases because they have a guild base, so they don't need a personal base. So I don't know exactly how that would work, but they could come up with something that you could lose access to if you don't pay down this debt. And then, that debt can be in Spice Melange, that debt can be in Solari, whatever it is. So you still have the ability to kill faction members, right? You still have friendly fire. So that stuff's going to happen by accident during PvP combat. That stuff's going to happen on purpose because you have, warring or beefing guilds within the same faction and all that stuff. But you need to have a mechanic in place that says if you really, really want to fight a lot, then you need to spread out. You need to be in both factions. So if one faction is super heavy, right, like Atreides on our server has basically everyone, if you wanted to PvP, then you would have to move to Harkonnen. Because right now you can't kill all the Atreides people, because if you kill all the Atreides people, you just stack up this huge fee that then has to be paid as reparations to House Atreides. And so this stance, this free-for-all stance, unless they just mean that they want to make sure that they keep friendly fire always active, is a terrible stance. Because right now their faction system literally doesn't matter. There is no reason to even pay attention to what faction you're in. So, yeah. Deep Desert Zone for only foot combat? No. Here's that big long question. Will we ever be able to stack storage boxes? Are there any plans to make building easier? Will you be looking at a change that allows us to take a corpse? How do you plan on fixing the PvP balance at the moment? Surely the scout shouldn't have offensive capabilities as a balance. So again, taking away. Everybody wants to balance by taking away. And this is terrible. But let's read what the answer is. I assume this is in relation to flying vehicles specifically, things we are considering. Equipping a scout ornithopter with rocket pods reduces the overall maneuverability and max speed. This will help solidify this module section as a desire to engage in combat and balance it versus other combat-focused vehicles. Scout Ornithopter rockets to cause slightly uh, more heat to fire, limiting its combat usefulness relative to the Assault Ornithopter, while still allowing it to be aerial threat. Scout Ornithopter thrusters to provide a bonus to the maximum speed of the Ornithopter at all times, even while gliding. Okay, so these are some things I didn't even think of, but this is fantastic, right? Stop trying to take stuff away. Start looking at ways to balance those things inside of there. Right? We don't need to get rid of the Scout Ornithopter's ability to have rockets. We need to do what this person says, right? We need to, I love this, slightly more heat when firing, which means you can't fire as consistently. This is great. I also like the idea of giving negatives, and this should be something that goes across the board, right? It shouldn't just be the Scout Ornithopter. It should be every Ornithopter with rocket pods, right? But the bigger Ornithopters obviously are going to suffer less of a speed reduction because they're larger, they're under more power, they just naturally move faster. So this is great, right? And that leaves options for uniques in the future that maybe don't have as much, or specifically this. The more stats that things have, the more interesting your uniques can be, because the more variability you have in those stats. So the other option, and this honestly to me is probably the biggest thing about the game right now, is vehicles. And so I need to see at least plans for a vehicle pass in the next 3 or 4 months. I need for Funcom to tell me that sometime in the next 12 months, I'm going to get an update to the vehicles, and it's going to be a huge overhaul. Because right now, vehicles are set up to be like a player, right? You have 3 ability slots in your vehicle. But I can't find any vehicles that I can put more than 2 active abilities worth of modules on, right? The Scout Ornithopter can get the booster and it can get the scanner. And that's it. As far as I can figure out on any of the vehicles, 2 is the maximum. So I'm not even getting to use my 3 vehicle or my 3 skill slots on any of my vehicles. But beyond that, there's no technique slots on those vehicles. So look at the way the player is constructed. You get 3 technique slots, which are massive passives that really, really change your character build. And then you've got 3 active abilities, which again are massive game-changing, play style changing abilities. And then take a look at the vehicles. There are 5 to 6 major components of a vehicle. The only one that has 5 is the sand bike. But normally you have the chassis, you have 2 pieces of hull, you have a PSU, you have an engine, and you have a traversal unit, either wings or treads. The sand bike only has 1 piece of hull instead of 2. And so you have the ability to make modules that are either technique modules or ability modules for all 6 of those different pieces. And so I should be able to put modules on all 6 of those pieces, right? The PSU gaining more power, or, being able to go into an overload, or, all of these different things to change the way your play works. Because vehicles are boring right now. Right? You've got maybe 5 modules for any given vehicle. Let's actually take a look. I think the vehicle with the most modules is either the Scout Ornithopter or the Buggy. The Buggy's got cut array, storage, missiles, and booster. And the Scout Ornithopter has scanner, booster, storage, missiles. I think that's it. So you're looking at like 4 modules maximum, and only 2 of those modules being able to be on a piece at a time. I mean, it's boring as shit. So let's get some more modules. Let's take a vehicle pass. Let's expand on that. It is the most boring part of your game right now. A lot of PvE players feel disheartened and discouraged by the current setup for endgame play, as PvP is basically forced on anyone wanting to advance in the game. Are there any considerations to adjust for this, or perhaps make resources available without having to delve into PvP? We will continue to make improvements to the lands red to ensure that it better serves needs of PvE players. The deep desert itself will remain PvP as it is today, with a PvE area in the south. So, again, this person is trying to fundamentally change the game. I understand if you're a PvE only player wanting to be able to go into the deep desert, but I just don't think that it's realistic to even hope that this might ever change. You are never going to get a PvE way to get the absolutely best resources. You're just not. And I think that plays into their vision of having to cooperate and coordinate with people, right? You need people who are PvE players in your guild, and those people need to be protected, right? If you're a strictly PvE player, then your guild should be taking you out into PvP zones and letting you do PvE things while they protect you. And your whole goal in life should be do the PvE thing and run the fuck away. And that's just the way it is. And if you don't even want to engage in PvP so far as you don't even want to have to run away, then Dune is not the game for you, and you should not play it. There are lots of PvE survival games out there. There are not any, as far as I know, there are 0 PvE MMO survival games out there. But you do have games like Enshrouded, where you can travel. You've got a loft where you can take literally your entire little island that you're making into your base and sort of travel around to other people's worlds and bring your whole little base island with you and hang out and, show off and stuff like that. So there are definitely communities around that. You have Valheim, which you can, travel to other people's servers and bring your character and stuff. There are lots of PvE survival games that are giving you sort of your own instance of the world and then giving you this peer-to-peer way to sort of share those worlds and share those experiences with people. So it's not ideal and it's not perfect, but I would recommend playing one of those games because you're not going to be happy playing Dune if you don't ever want to engage with PvP. Now it seems that the game is heavily tied to vehicular movement. As someone who wants to be a desert wanderer relying heavily on walking the desert, are there any plans to add something like sand walking? Really enjoying the game. Portset Sanguta. We will do walking without rhythm. Okay, awesome. So this is kind of cool because if you have a way to not summon the worm in the desert, getting really good at that could potentially mean going out into the deep desert on foot, which I think would be crazy. Are there any plans for procedural/radiant contracts at the outpost boards? It's not in our plans right now, but we're always looking at viable options to add to the game as long as it fits with Dune. Can you please add deposit all? Curious if there will be boss fights, roadmap, right now respecking. Are there any plans for map expansion? More options to solo players in the desert, being able to hide in the dunes like a Fremen, or for the exploration Orni to be more agile and without rockets, etc. Thanks for being with the community. Fremen secrets are only known to the Fremen. We will address what that means sometime in the future. We will make the Scout Thopter be more maneuverable when spec for that. Okay, so we are going to make the Scout Thopter more maneuverable when it's not spec'd for PvP. So this is great. Like I said, they're doing some sort of a balance pass on the vehicles, trying to change things, but I need more modules. Give me more modules. Is there going to be a PvE only option? No. Do you plan to enable character transfer to a different server siege, mainly to skip the main story and keep the level? This is likely to happen, but not in the near future. Ooh. Thought we were going to get it in the near future. That's too bad. Two things. Can you make it easier to reach the bank and players' sailboards without having to travel all the way to the location? And two, will there be some type of vehicle insurance or adjustments to rebuilding without going through the extreme process of rebuilding? Thank you. Awesome game so far. No, you're trying to make the game easier, and Funcom does not seem interested in making the game easier. We are looking at improving a few of these, especially when it comes to certain variants of vehicles that are especially difficult to target / repair. Okay, so yeah, some of the modules and stuff are a little bit difficult to click. We want to send players to the social hubs, but we are considering ways to make it more accessible. Still, as for dealing with vehicle loss, we are considering several ways to make it more manageable. Don't do that. We will look into adding some additional convenience to these features, but it is important for us to have certain features that require you to travel to the social areas and cities. As for vehicle insurance, we don't want losing your vehicle to be a catastrophic setback, so we are looking into ways to ease the loss in specific situations. Getting eaten by a sandworm will always come with a hefty cost, though. um, any plans for new tools like an elevator? This gives us the freedom to build anywhere and enables the buggy and bike to be up there. House buffs, bosses, maybe raid bosses, expanding the map, new biomes, transport possibilities where you can choose a set of storage boxes to where to transport them second base with a transport heli that does it for you. I would love if the carrier could actually pick up storage crates and then fly them over and plunk them down at a new base. That'd be super cool. We had plans for suspensor elevators in the Rift to allow people to quickly get out of it with ground vehicles, but had to cut the feature from launch scope. I'll check with the building team to see if this is something we can add to player bases in a future update. Awesome. Awesome. How difficult was it to balance the alternative timeline you created with the books, and how did that influence some decisions in the game and story moving forward? Only 25-ish hours in. It's one of the best survival games I've played in a while. I agree with that sentiment. It wasn't particularly difficult once we had figured out the alternate timeline. At that point, it was mostly a matter of extrapolating out from the core ideas. The rules of the universe remain the same, so elements like dew reapers or sandworms or spice could easily be built out from their descriptions in the book. It was all very concrete. The storyline was where we had more freedom to play, but luckily Frank Herbert provided a lot of threads with the concept of the Golden Path, the Bene Gesserit breeding program. For us, it was a lot of fun to try to imitate the beats of Herbert's stories, but with a different set of characters and a different set of objectives, but with the same ultimate destination. Frank Herbert was a master of hinting at a lot while saying very little, and our pressure was in expanding things out based on his teases. Been a lot of fun. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that the team is enjoying the process. Do you plan on releasing some kind of roadmap? Is there going to be any kind of game store? Okay, we've already read those. So let's go back here. Let's refresh this bad boy. Let's look at answered questions. Quality of life, we've already done this one. Weekly contracts, contracts in the Haga Basin, entertaining the idea of making changes to the Scout. Here's another answer to the same question. The plan is not to remove rockets from the Scout Ornithopter. We will make it so how you equip your Scout will affect its maneuverability, speed, etc., making the Assault Copter the better choice when you want to engage in combat, but still keeping some offensive capabilities for the Scout if that's how you choose to spec. Like this a lot. Continue to play. Will you be looking at change so we can rename storages? Are there any plans to implement something like faction? No. Quick combat. Big ass question. Stack storage. Building easier. Corpses. PvP balance. A lot of PvE players are disheartened. Will you add option for duels? Yes, we're planning to add the possibility to duel. This is cool. There should always be duels in games. I don't personally care to engage, but it's cool. What plans do you guys have for in-game content concerning PvE? Beginning of the game up to the Deep Desert is absolutely amazing. I certainly hope PvEers eat good going forward. Thought you might want to check out these responses. Yeah, the PvE seems like it's going to be just fine going into the future. Gonna do walking without rhythm. I really appreciate that. Please, can we have a door tall enough so that the buggy with the mining laser can go through it? My poor buggy is left outside under a bit of a roof most of the time. Not a huge fan of the aesthetics that pentashields offer for a base. Probably a minority here. We don't have that on the roadmap currently, but it's a good idea. We'll see what we can do. You can drive the buggy through the wide door with the laser. The laser just clips through. So I don't know what this person's smoking. Why isn't the trial instanced like all the rest? Results in a queue of players lining up, dying of thirst. Players then pushed to rush through a big story beat so that their peers can get in. Mostly due to technical and time limitations, we fully understand that this is not optimal. We'll look at improving this in the future. Good deal. Are there any plans for procedural radiant contracts? Can you please add deposit all? Will there be a roadmap published soon? Curious if there will be boss fights, respecking, daily quests. There are currently no plans to add this to the mission boards, but we'll consider it for the future. Are there plans for a map expansion? When will you add a PvE version to the Deep Desert? We have no plans to add a PvE version to the Deep Desert, but we will continue to expand the game with PvE areas. Is there a third faction coming to the game? It is not House Carino. It is coming. Okay, is the third faction coming to the game, whose purpose was previously described as to help keep the balance of power between Atreides and Harkonnen, going to be the House Carino? Shafto asking the big questions. It is not going to be House Carino. I don't know who House Carino is, honestly, but it's not going to be them. Is there going to be a PvE only option? No. Since the game has gone live, Funcom has offered various building pieces, murals, and other cosmetics through tie-ins, such as purchasing a $35 box from a US-only gamer supplement company for a single piece of base decor. We're giving Twitch streamers multiple gift subscriptions for an in-game social outfit. Given the increasing real-world money cost of and inconvenience of getting some of these items in-game, does Funcom have any plans to make these assets available to players via other means at some point? We will look at adding them in the future, but not in the short term. Will they give more options to solo players in the Deep Desert? 2 things. Can you make it easier to reach the bank? We already answered that one. There's actually a lot of answers here. We will look at improving a few of these, especially when it comes to certain variants. We want to send players to the social hubs. I think I've actually already read all 3 of those answers. Do you plan to enable character transfer? Are there any plans for new tools? Landsrat is broken. Yes. This is going to be a big one for me. Tiles being claimed within seconds of going live. Worlds are dominated by large guilds and heavily one-sided on the faction front. No room to even compete. You're left with defecting or just plain quitting. It should be overhauled. In my opinion, control points are scored unrealistically low. Would take days of camping to win a slot. Meanwhile, a mass handoff clears it in no time. Mechanically unbalanced, dominated by Zerg guilds, leaving no room for solo players and small guilds or even large guilds if you're on the side with the lower player base to contribute. This leaves players disengaging with the system and sucks the fun out. My question, are you going to fix it? This is a really passive-aggressive question. Bad form. effective uncertainty. You had a really, really well thought out question here, and as you went through it, you could tell you got more and more angry. And then at the end, you had this passive aggressive jab, like, "Are you going to do anything about it?" So bad form. Good question. We will continue to look at the Landsrat and balance things as we go forward. There are multiple activities beyond handing in resources that require people to do things that cannot be stockpiled. We'll continue to add activities on servers that are heavily dominated by a single faction. Balancing features will begin to kick in, but it has only been 2 weeks, so give this time to work. Finally, the third faction will change the entire dynamic when it comes online, so we'll see how that goes. I am not hopeful for this, and I'll explain why. In the past, it has been alluded to the fact that the third faction is going to be a balancing influence, because the way the third faction is going to gain rewards from the Landsrat is going to be based on how the Landsrat balance plays out. But that doesn't change the fact that it is more optimum for everybody to join the same faction so that everybody gets the Landsrat decree rewards and then just go PvP in the deep desert. So unless, yeah, there's really, I can't think of anything. I can't think of any way that the third faction could work outside of the third faction having the ability to affect players of the other faction, right? The third faction would have to be given control over other players in order for that faction to change the optimum play style of everybody joining the same faction. And the reason that is because there's no imposition of the politics in the game on the player. And I talked about this earlier, and we're going to talk about it again, because I'm right. This is the hill I will die on. There needs to be a penalty for killing members of your own faction. I am so happy, so outstandingly happy with the fact that you have friendly fire on. I think that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in one of these games. I am losing my mind. I'm so happy about it. But because that's the case, your faction system has turned into a guild versus guild system. There's no reason for me to put in the considerable effort, because it is a considerable effort, and it's a considerable effort that has to take place outside of the game, to go and find other guilds of my faction and then create alliances and, figure out ways to identify each other and all of this other stuff, which is really, really cool gameplay. But it's a lot, right? It takes significant energy, and it takes you out of the game for a really long time. And there's already a lot to do to lead a guild. And so the best, the most efficient, and this is something that's been true for all of gaming, gamers will efficiency the fun out of a game. They will optimize the fun out of a game. And you've set up a system where the optimum way to play is everybody join one guild or one faction, and then everybody just kill each other in the open world. And just have guild PvP. So there's no need for me to make an alliance with anybody else. There's no need for any of that. I just kill on sight everybody who's not in my guild. And then I just join the faction, and then it doesn't even matter, right? You lose out in the deep desert. You never gain any points. It doesn't even matter. You still get the Landsrat decree because you're all members of the same faction. So make a penalty. Let it be Solari. Let it be Spice Melange. Let it be whatever it is. And because you already have the friendly fire on, now you're inhibiting Zerg guilds, because those Zerg guilds are naturally going to kill each other sometimes. right? You're going to be out there doing a big spice operation. You're going to have 3 crawlers going on. You're going to have 8, or 9 or 10 or 12 assault doctors or 20 assault doctors chilling out protecting these 3 spice crawlers while they gather up all this spice. And then you're going to have, 4 people come in on assault doctors to try and stop you. And your 20 assault doctors are going to fight these 4 assault doctors, and everybody's going to get mixed in together, and missiles are going to start flying. And players from that big group are going to start downing their own allies, and they're going to start incurring fees because they're downing their own allies. And so now Zergs are, not only are Zergs not gaining efficiency by Zerging, they're actively being inhibited by their Zerg mentality. And so you're forcing people to come back down to that smaller skirmish style fighting that you've been trying to get going on this whole time. You're evening things out. You actually have a great system so far. This is the first time that anybody has come up with a system that is actively trying to inhibit Zerging and is potentially doing a good job. And you've got one more step that you have to go through. And that is that you now have to incur a penalty when you mess up and kill your own faction. And now I have reasons to go out and identify who the guilds are in my faction. I have reason to go out and do the diplomacy. Because if I don't do that diplomacy, then I'm going to waste even more of my game time farming up the extra spice melange and the extra Solari to pay down the debt because I keep just killing on sight everybody else. So absolutely, make this thing. I think it's a really, really quick change. Well, maybe not a quick change, but it is a single change that will completely adjust the dynamic of your open world PvP. It has to be done. I will die on this hill, 100%. I am going to harp on this every time. What's the biggest surprise following the release of the game? We knew that we had a good game, but we were still overwhelmed by how positive the reception has been. Also, we see that players have long play sessions, which is great. Yeah, I mean, I've been playing like 15 hours a day, so how difficult. Dradaretic, hey all, thanks for reading through all this stuff, Hermit. I really appreciate the dev interaction and answers. I absolutely do as well, Drat. The devs in this game do a really good job of getting out there and talking. Here's another important one. Can we expect further improvements to the social aspect of the game? As it stands right now, outside of doing PvP, there isn't much of an incentive to interact with other players or talk to them. I would love to see more emotes, costumes, towns and cities, and social elements being added to further immerse yourself in the world and hopefully by extension encourage others to do the same. For sure, we will keep adding to and evolving our social features in the game. There are more emotes and costumes on the way, and we'll keep evolving our existing social hubs with additional content and reasons to go there. This is a big one. They say they want to drive us to the social hubs, but honestly, I don't ever go to the social hub. I don't have any need to engage with the auction house there yet or anything like that. So do you have plans to make endgame more friendly for solo small group PvE players? It seems like there's a real wall post Haga Basin for this type of player, myself included, with the current model. A bit of a loaded question, of course, but I think it's clear from all the posts on this subreddit that the deep desert doesn't work as it is for a number of reasons. Expect they already have plans within plans. I'm just hoping that includes more love for the large faction of the community that are PvE focused. We do want the endgame to be blocked off to solo. We don't want the endgame, to be blocked off to solo players, so we will continue to make improvements to our existing features, Landsrat and Deep Desert, and add additional content and features that solo players can engage with. We will have more information on this in the near future. Hey, that's exciting. We already read that one. Do you plan on releasing some sort of roadmap? Will we have dual daggers soon or the arrival of dual Chris knife? We will add some form of dual wielding, but it will not be possible to mix and match weapons. Okay. Interesting. I wonder if that dual wielding will extend to things like the Mala pistol. I'd actually love to be able to dual wield some snub noses or some Mala pistols or maybe even like the Disruptor SMGs. I think that would actually make those weapons see a little more playtime because right now they're a little on the not so useful side. We get a top-down building view. There are currently no plans to add this. I agree the friendly fire adds to the experience. I was a little perplexed that abilities like the Sentinel turret targets anyone not in the immediate party, though. Does it also continue to do that in PvE zones? I do know that it does that in PvP zones, which is freaking hilarious. Um, but yeah, so that's, I mean, that's just because of the friendly fire thing. So, do you plan to add farming-ish features like some greenhouse where we can see an experimental stations to grow some fibers, etc.? Maybe one day, not in the near future. Suspensor elevators when likely to happen. Fantastic. Any plans to address the storage system using weight and volume in the storage cases appears to be unnecessary. Generally cannot fill cases due to the weight restrictions. There are no plans to change the volume and slot approach. It gives us the levers to balance this type of logistics instead of just one. I like it, honestly, very much. They only target in those ship wreckages. At least Hermit's turrets never targeted me in the testing stations. Okay, yeah, so it's just in the PvP areas. So that's just a random targeting. And honestly, that makes the Mentat, that actually balances the Mentat turret because the Mentat turret is exceptionally strong. So, while hostile PvE animal type, will hostile PvP animal types be added to the game to give us a mix of potential threats out in the world? I'm not clued up on the lore, but fighting something other than a humanoid would be really cool. We are considering more enemy types long term. Obviously, as we move into other worlds and other regions of Arrakis, this is going to become more and more likely. I just don't think that in the desert there are lots of like predatory animals that we could be fighting other than the worms. And you can't kill the worms. So I was curious, is there an ETA on the time we wait for the content not being delivered in the ultimate and deluxe upgrades to be fixed on folks' account? Many of us are missing licenses in Steam from cosmetics to the wildlife of Arrakis. Steam and Funcom tickets have not been helpful, but Funcom's latest rep did acknowledge the issue and was sending it to others to help with it. Steam refuses to let you get a refund if you played 2 hours with the DLC installed. I know many are sad that there are only 4 statues of wildlife of Arrakis, but I was looking forward to using them in a community base. Again, it isn't that we don't know where it is, but we were never given the license associated with content we purchased, especially the season pass, having no wildlife of Arrakis license being associated with it. Basically, the upgrades are not providing everyone with every license we purchased, so I have the season pass license, but not the wildlife of Arrakis license. There are many of us who are in this boat. The second question on this, do they plan to expand wildlife of Arrakis to include some more statues or planets? Or are the 4 statues the final product of that one and more just a small thing to give people something for buying the season pass? I know we had issues when we first launched due to a setup error in the Steam backend. That should be resolved. Let me follow up on this and I'll get you an update and have community communicate what the plans are. You should have everything you paid for, so we will get it fixed ASAP. Maybe in Caledon there could be different types of animals. Yeah, I mean exactly. I don't know anything about the Dune lore, especially anything about the Dune lore outside of Arrakis. Right? Like I watched the old Dune movie. I've never seen the new ones, but I watched the old Dune movie, and that's all of the Dune lore I know. So anything that happens outside of specifically Arrakis is completely outside of the scope of my knowledge. So I'm honestly kind of looking forward to learning about the Dune universe by playing a video game. there aren't a lot of uh, there aren't a lot of IPs that I know so little about that are being made into a video game. So this is, I mean, honestly, just a really cool way for me to experience the lore of this world. Will there be a mini map instead of a wind vane at the top? We are not planning to add a mini map. Is there going to be, nope. Any plans to add a trade board in the trade post, not a trade terminal, but something for people can scroll through and see what's for sale? This would help players find what they want to buy or identify gaps in the market. We are looking at several convenience options for the exchange, and this is one of them. I don't have an ETA to share with you on it, though. Yeah, the auction house thing is not very well put together, which is weird to me because every MMO ever has had an auction house. So how did you not get that right? I mean, I'm honestly kind of mind boggled. What are you going to do to handle losing your ornithopter when you DC or die in the deep desert? I've even seen players lose it on the world map. This will come in multiple stages. We don't want you to lose your vehicle if you crash or disconnect from the game. In the next fix, we have made some improvements so that you will have time to connect and get back in your vehicle. In a future patch, we will look at other ways to decrease the overall setback when losing a vehicle. We don't want this to be a catastrophic loss, especially for solo players. Will you add a feature to deposit leader johns into water and cistern all at once? Yes. Thank goodness, too. Okay, we've got so many more questions to go find and read now. So let's go ahead and refresh this bad boy. I don't think that refreshed, actually. There we go. Refresh and hit the answered. And now we get to scroll again until we find questions we haven't answered. Big ass long question. Right. This answer is just going to other answers, but I'm playing mostly slow though. Don't care for the deep desert because we only get bullied by guilds. How can we solo players advance the late game without having to join a guild? You can't. The end game of this game is almost entirely tuned towards groups. You can go to the shipwrecks, not the big shipwrecks, but the little shipwrecks that happen. You can get a lot of good resources from those. You can hop around to the small and medium spice nodes, and you can go to places where there aren't concentrations of stravidium and titanium, right? Where there's only a little bit. And you can mostly avoid guilds in that way. They answered the vehicle to vehicle storage transfer. I haven't seen anything about vehicle to vehicle, but they did mention they're going to give us the ability to change vehicle names and storage names so that we can more easily identify storage and vehicles so that we can move resources around better. But as far as being able to move from like storage to storage or vehicle to vehicle, they haven't made any mention of that yet. How do you plan on fixing PvP balance? Will you add an option for duels? In-game content for PvE? Vehicular? Door, we already answered that. Why isn't the final trial instance? Are there any plans for procedural? Can you please add deposit all? Will there be a roadmap? Boss fights? Will you be adding daily and weekly quests to the mission boards at the trading post? Are there plans for map expansion? When will you add a PvE version to the Deep Desert? Third faction coming. The third faction is not House Carino. Is there going to be a PvE only option? Ooh, man, we've been talking so much. Hang on, I gotta get a drink of water. Goodness, sorry, I just smacked the crap out of my microphone. Oh, that's a good one. So this answer right here makes me think that the third faction is going to be the Fremen. Um, Fremen secrets are only known to the Fremen. We will address what that means sometime in the future, right? That's crazy. Um, we will make the Scout Thopter be more maneuverable when spec for that. So this right here, we will address what that means sometime in the future. Because they've been really elusive about the third faction. Honestly, I really think the third faction is going to be the Fremen. Reaching the bank. You plan to enable character transfers. Will you ever implement a mini map? Okay, so this is a longer answer, but basically the answer is no. But let's read this. Will you ever implement a mini map or map overlay so I can navigate easier while driving? I'm finding that I open and close my full screen map repeatedly while trying to dodge quicksand, etc. No, we actually had one for a while, and I asked the team to remove it. Minimaps draw the eye away from the world and distract from the experience. Agree? Instead, we moved the design to a more intentional focus on world elements, scanning to have resources show in 3D space or hazards like quicksand be something that you plan your route around. Vehicle scanners will be your friend when dodging quicksand, but also just learning to recognize it visually will be of great help. I love this. And this is, I love this because this is the way I already play games. I identify, especially when I'm gathering and I'm like, running routes and stuff like that, trying to gather resources. I tend to identify, um, what's the word? What's the word? What's the word? Landmarks. There we go. I tend to identify landmarks for myself, and then I use those landmarks to help me navigate. And as soon as I get kind of used to an area, I sort of stop using my map. So I'm honestly kind of glad that they went that route because a mini map I think would detract from that a lot. And like Joel said, I would just be sitting there staring at my mini map as I drove around instead of, enjoying the world around me. So honestly, I think that no mini map is a good thing. Something I've noticed with this game and something that's really changed in my perspective with this game is information. A trend that we've been seeing in MMOs and a trend that we've been seeing change with survival games is that MMOs are constantly trying to give you as much information about yourself and the world around you as humanly possible. Um, so that you can have near perfect information. Yeah, like the big hammer rock, I know I've reached the anvil then. Absolutely, right? It's an anvil. So you got to anvil. That's awesome. But MMO games have constantly been trying to feed you information and you just get this overwhelming amount of data. And that's great because it lets you basically do the math on the situation and come to a conclusion as to what the outcome is going to be. But it also gets rid of some of the intuition that goes with playing a game and experiencing an environment. Um, if you know too much about how stats are calculated, then you know exactly who's going to win a fight before the fight happens. And so action combat is one way that you sort of get around that, right? Because your ability to dodge hits based on player skill changes the outcome of that fight some. But also, if you obfuscate some of those stats, if you make it so that a person doesn't really know what their equipment and stuff is doing, then you can also change that. And the same thing is true of exploring the world. So I guess the point I'm trying to get at here is I like to see that they have these sort of layers of information and that the further out you get from your person, the less information you have, right? I know a lot about what's going on with my character in this game, but I know much less about what's going on with my party. And I know even less about what's going on with my guild. In the guild screen, I can't even see the levels of my guildmates, which is blowing my fucking mind. Because I don't know what level people are. I'm the guild leader. I have no fucking clue what level people are. So if I want that information, my character doesn't have that information. Me, survival hermit, has to go out and get that information by talking to people. It's crazy. It's freaking me out. I don't like it. That's not true. I love it. Landsrat's broken. We already talked about that one. Are there any plans for new tools like elevator? Already answered that one. Backing up as much as possible and starting all over again. Okay. As of right now, backing up as much as possible and starting all over again after taking a break seems really tedious and discouraging, pretty much killing interest in progressing at all in fear of losing too much. Do you have any plans to improve the comeback after a break mechanics for solo players while keeping the needed space cleaning mechanics? The game, as of now, supports you taking a break for almost 4 weeks. If you fuel your base fully with a high-tier generator, and before your base gets unpowered for having defaulted on your taxes, for the future, we will also be looking at adding mechanics to support easier recovery for taking an extended break. This is an important one, and it's one that they have to get on top of because survival games, especially MMO games, people like to keep their stuff, right? And this was a thing that happened in Once Human, where because we were having seasonal wipes, a lot of MMO players didn't want to play Once Human because they didn't want to lose their stuff. The same thing is going to be true here, right? I have characters on MMO games that I haven't played in years, right? Final Fantasy 14, Guild Wars 2. I can go load up those characters and my inventory is still there. My bank is still there. My character is still right where they started. I have access to everything I've ever had in the game still. Survival games are a whole different kind of monster because instead of my items existing only as this like table of stuff that exists in my inventory and my bank, my items are physically in the world, in storage chests in the world. And so if I don't play for a year, right, the game can't keep those storage chests there. It has to clean the server. It has to get rid of extraneous buildings. And in so doing, it's going to be getting rid of my items. And honestly, I think that you just need to give that stuff back to the player. Maybe the easiest, but probably the least elegant way to do this would be to literally just take all those items and put them in the player's inventory, right? They already have a way to give temporary backpack slots for your quest items, right? They go into backpack slots that don't take up your normal backpack because then if your backpack is full, you can still get the quest items. So just do something like this, honestly. If your base gets destroyed, literally all of the resources, everything that was in the base, all the resources from each of the demolished building pieces, all of that stuff, just stack it up, stick it in their inventory, give them temporary inventory spaces, and then at the very least, they can just go rebuild, make some chests, put all this stuff down again when they start. Like I said, it's a really, really inelegant way to go about it. But at the very least, everybody would get to keep all of their stuff. And that's kind of important. You don't have to engage in PvP, but you run the risk of meeting hostile players. There are currently no plans to change this for the deep desert. So is there any plans for PvE players to be able to progress to T6 without having to PvP? This is a deceptive response, and I consider it inaccurate. You do have to engage in PvP, because if I'm in a PvP enabled zone, I am engaging in PvP. If I have to be looking over my shoulder to see if somebody's coming to fight me, I'm engaged in PvP. If I have to run away because somebody's trying to kill me, I'm engaged in PvP. This is a lie. A flat out lie. I don't know what definition of PvP they're using, but you can only get tier 6 by going into the PvP enabled zone of the deep desert. You are engaged in PvP. So I'm actually pretty angry about this response. This is attempting to obfuscate reality. This is attempting to try and make it more PvE friendly. This is attempting to try and get players who only want to PvE to play the game when those players should not play Dune. Unless they're willing to not go all the way to tier 6. I think the Haga Basin is a really cool zone. And if you're willing to play the game without ever leaving the Haga Basin until, in the future when there's new DLCs that have new PvE zones that you can go to, then cool, play this game. But if you want to be able to get all the way to tier 6, if you want to go farm spice in the deep desert, there is no PvE way to do that. Do not play this game. What is the biggest surprise following the release of the game? We already read that one. How difficult was it to balance the alternative timeline you created? Can we expect further improvements to the social aspect of the game? Is there a plan to improve the current circuit system? Having water circuits, we can certainly look into this. Okay, let's read this one. Is there any plan to improve the circuit system for storage containers, having water circuits to split water consumption, and also be able to have a public water deposit where strangers could take a sip without emptying my tanks? This is an interesting idea, and I like this. Having filters over circuits for containers. Right now, I have all my refineries output set to circuit 2, but I would like to have a container per item instead of only machine type. Yeah, I like this. This is what I thought circuits were going to be more like. Instead of only having 9 circuits, I thought you were going to be able to choose a storage that was an input and choose a storage that was an output. PvE don't need those tier 6 too in terms of armor and weapons and stuff. I feel like that's true, Gravy. But you are basically choosing to have less of a game. Right? That would be like saying, I want to play WoW, but I don't want to do the level 60 raids. I only want to do level 55 raids. Right? And that would be saying, you can play WoW without ever getting to level 60. Right? You can just stay at level 55. But if you do that, you can't play the level 60 raids. You can only play the level 55 raids. And that's ass. Do you have any plans to make endgame more friendly for solo? We already read that one. We already read this one. Roadmap, dual daggers, top-down building view. Perhaps that is where the auction house comes in, but I'm not trying to play devil's advocate. So absolutely, the auction house can totally get you to tier 6. But then that's the same thing, right? That's saying you can get level 60 equipment, but you can still only play level 55 raids with your level 60 equipment because you still have to go into a PvP zone to go do the testing stations that are of the highest tier. So now great, I have the equipment from the level 60 raid, but I can still only play the level 55 raid. So instead of gaining this new equipment and then gaining a new challenge, I've gained this new equipment and I just raffle stomp the shit out of level 55 raids. And that's also ass. It's just not a game that you should play if you're unwilling to go into a PvP zone. And they shouldn't be trying to make it sound like it is. Because that's not true. If you're unwilling to go into the PvP zone, you absolutely can still play this game, but it needs to be made crystal clear that you are not getting tier 6. That not just that you're not getting the equipment, because like we just said, you can get the equipment, but you are not going to get to play tier 6 content if you don't PvP. And so we need to stop obfuscating that fact. We need to stop saying, no, there's totally ways around it. There's not. If you want to play tier 6 content with tier 6 gear, you will go into a PvP zone and somebody will murder you. It might not happen the first time. It might not happen the first 100 times. It's going to happen. You're going to get killed, period. And so either you have to be okay with not playing tier 6 content, or you don't play Dune. I'm so tired of all the, oh, but you totally, no, you can't. The cake is a lie. Will sandwalking become a feature? Yeah, they talked about how they want to do walk without rhythm. Will sandwalking become a feature, either manually executed or a technique? I know myself and a few friends would love to be able to go full Fremen given the option. It's something we did explore during development, but it was a tricky feature to find the fun in. It also did not make sense to add it, since this was something you would learn from the Fremen. We'll consider it again in the future, I'm sure. This also makes me think the third faction will be Fremen. Suspensor elevators, woohoo! Any plans to address storage system using weight and volume? Will hostile PvE animal types be added to the game? I was curious, is there an ETA? Okay. Will there be a mini map? No. Are you planning to add a faction chat option? Yeah. Are you planning on adding a faction chat option? It would be nice to coordinate with other guilds in the game, in the same faction, on the same server. Maybe allow only guild leaders to post a message there. Don't do that. Don't try and make yourself more important than you are. You can't have an only guild leader chat. I mean, I guess you could have an only guild leader chat, but then you can't make other people be able to read it. That's dumb. So there is too much in this game. And this is something I was thinking about previously, but the social interaction of this game, because of friendly fire and because of what I hope will be some changes to the faction system for the Landsrad in the future, you cannot make a robust enough chat and or voice system inside of the game to handle all of this stuff that goes into this politicking. Right? You need a third-party resource. And so instead of trying to add a bunch of stuff to the game so that I can contact people inside of the game, I would prefer to maybe see a partnership with a third-party chat service like Discord or something like that, to maybe help us. Right, you have Discord bots, so maybe an official Discord bot made by the Funcom team that could help you identify the guilds inside of your faction, inside of your world, or something like that. Or maybe some official Discord servers for each of the different worlds with each of the different factions, so that we could maybe come together or something like that, because the chat system needs to be way too robust, right? I need to be able to share pictures so that I can show my allies what my faction is wearing. I need to be able to share data about activities going on in the deep desert. I need to be able to automatically copy paste that information to different channels. I need so much outside communication support that trying to get that put in the game is way too much. And it's never going to be good enough. So let's not half-ass in-game communication. Um, because we know we're never going to reach the level that we need to with in-game communication. Instead, let's look for some outside options that the game developers can support in some way that can make those third-party options more usable and more directly associated with the game. I've got 3 questions. Will you expand the basic building sets? Selection of blocks is really restrictive and it sucks to build with. Will it ever be possible to rotate pieces along all 3 axes? That could add some extra options without having to make new blocks. 2, player market is really barren, barely used, prices are random, and functionality is lacking. Really fast resource respawn rates also make it pretty much pointless outside of unique blueprints. If you're not going to give us the ability to trade outside of social hubs, can you at least give us the ability to see the market so that we can plan trips there accordingly? I could get behind this. I can't even buy basic resources from it because no one even uses it. I think this is a great idea. A way to just see it. I could totally get behind having to go there either to pick up my items or to purchase the items. But I would kind of like to be able to just see what's there. That's kind of interesting. Maybe some mid-in-game market view console. EVE Online did the player market idea perfectly. You could take some inspiration with all the different order types, etc. What the hell is up with the graphics settings? It's like they don't work properly. Setting everything to ultra and then back to the same settings actually give me better performance. Is there some sort of crashing issue? Regarding the exchange, we're looking at making it more accessible for players while keeping the need to go to social hubs. That was really lackluster answer. Is there going to be any kind of in-game store? No. What are your thoughts on adding missions that involve raiding low-traveling spaceships / freighters or Sardaukar ships mid-flight? Imagine dropping off your pals onto the hull to breach, whilst a few others fend off the enemy escorts. Gotta get in, get out quickly. Too long, and the captain will call in reinforcements or scuttle the ship, etc. If we let you raid Sardaukar ships with an actual Sardaukar instead of those terrible chome mercs they keep hiring, you'd be killed. Interesting idea, though. We'll keep it in mind. Yeah, this is super interesting, actually. I like this idea a lot. I don't know the technical requirements of being able to do something like this, and I don't know if the team would ever add it, but it interests the crap out of me. Siege transfers, they said they are going to try and make this possible. Okay, well, we've got some new answers here, so let's read this whole question again, and then we'll go back through. Will siege transfers be a possibility in the future? If so, do you have a rough time scale? I'm currently stuck permanently visiting my friends on their siege due to them locking on day 1, as I know are many others. Do you have any plans to improve accessibilities to the player marketplace? It seems like a good but really underused system, mainly due to the 2.5k cost of traveling there or waiting and unlocking Ornithopter in later game. When finding materials come much easier anyway, maybe a craftable terminal in your base, access at trade posts. As you said, you can already visit other sieges in your world, which allows you to do everything except a few things like claim land. You can still be added as a co-owner for an existing sub-fief and build with your friends. We will soon be removing that restriction and allowing your character to freely move between any siege on your world. Yes, we will be continuously improving the user experience of our features, including the exchange. In our next big patch, we will be adding the option to sell items directly from your vehicle storage to the vehicle you arrived into the social hub with. Ooh, interesting. Interesting. Next big patch, you will be adding the option to sell items directly from your vehicle storage for the vehicle you arrived into the social hub with. Awesome. The visiting feature will be updated in an upcoming patch. You'll essentially have all the building permissions when visiting other sieges in your world. Regarding the exchange, we certainly want to make it more convenient for players to use, but we don't want to eliminate the need to travel to social hubs. What's the meaning of Zerg? What do you mean, what's the meaning of Zerg? The term Zerg comes from StarCraft. In StarCraft, Zerg is one of the races that you can play as. It's an RTS game. And the Zerg playstyle was just to make a whole ass ton of really weak enemies. And then just because you had so many enemies, you just overwhelm the other team. So it's just about having a shit ton of people. Yeah, I saw a reply in the post saying if the guilds want to Zerg. Yeah, so a Zerg is just a whole assload of people. 2 questions. The building tiles are great for cubes, but the triangles lack the ability to fill gaps in basic turns. And the roof tiles can only have an inside radius. Will you be expanding building tiles to enable more diversity in structures? Quests have been a lot of fun, and the lore has so much room for exploration. Will you be adding missions and PvE story content on a regular basis? We don't have any concrete plans on expanding individual building sets, but we are continuously assessing needs and improvements. We will definitely add more contracts and PvE story content. Can you improve the feelings of cities and outposts in the game to be a meeting hub of sorts? Right now, I keep running into an issue of not being able to see my friends in Arakeen or Harco Village because they are in a different instance than me. Despite us being together in a group, it defeats the purpose of those cities being anything more than an interactive quest hub and a loading screen. I would also love to see the ability to toggle walk in cities and outposts like Anvil so we can walk around immersively within them. It should be rare that you don't see your friends because they're in a different instance as long as you are in the same world. We will definitely make it possible to toggle walk in cities and outposts. Ooh, gonna get the RP walk action. Would it be possible to have one extra shipwreck that is PvE only so we don't have to farm just the one on Haga Basin South? It'd be great to have one in Vermilion on that big central rock mass, even if it's with higher level mobs inside. We're not planning to add more shipwrecks to South Haga Basin. Are you going to address solo players losing their entire base if they can't play more than 25 days in official servers? Taxation and base shield. Most of the in-game progression is tied to base buildings. I feel like you have the obligation to solo players so that they have option to not lose their progression if they can't play the game for more than a month for any reason. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this, but we are not planning to change how this works currently. So the thing here to me is, like I said, you just give them all their stuff back. Just dump it into some extra slots in their inventory, overweight the crap out of them, and then don't let them pick up anything else until they put their base down and make some storages and put all that stuff in there. Because you can't start all over again because you took a break, right? This game is trying to be an MMO, so I need to be able to keep my stuff. Will there be more additions to the build menu, such as half floor pieces, half vertical walls, decor? Will there be other ways to earn Mark 6 BPs and materials that do not require PvP? There is so much potential with building with more pieces and tools at our disposal. We will add more building sets over time. Fantastic. Although I think this means more building sets with the same general structures, but we'll see. Will there be more building sets? Why make DD and in-game exclusive for guilds and PvP players? You have a wholesome solo and PvE game foundation and experience in the beginning, but still choose to exclude PvE players from the Deep Desert endgame content and materials. We don't want to exclude solo, casual, or small groups. The Deep Desert will always be PvP, but we will be adding additional content to the game for PvE players and other ways to progress your gear and base beyond what is available in Haga Basin. I like that this person straight out said the deep desert will always be PvP. Right? Finally, somebody not trying to obfuscate that fact. Hello, congratulations to the entire team for this excellent, not to say addictive game. Could you consider adding a hotkey to change seats and vehicles? The process of changing from driver's seat to buggy's cut array is currently tedious and time consuming. Thank you for your response and for taking time to listen to the community. Thanks. We are really excited about the game and the future content that is in development. Changing seats on a hotkey will be added to one of the first patches to the game, so it will come in either July or August. Fantastic. Will there be more story content for the game? Absolutely. I know I probably missed an update or another Q&A, but are there plans for different kinds of builds than what is currently available? I love playing like stealthy assassin characters or something that can sneak around and backstab would be fun, even like tank/support options too. We will add new archetypes and trainers in the future. This is something that I've been questioning about, but I haven't been 100% about. We will add new archetypes and trainers in the future, and we will start development on the first ones soon. It's too early to go into details on it, though. Okay, so development hasn't even started on any new classes. So I would assume it's going to be 9 months to a year before we see another class, depending on how quickly they can roll that out. But I wouldn't expect to see this new class sooner than a year from now, probably. What are the plans to allow us to move sieges and play with friends without penalties? We will have news on this very soon. Some improvements to the system are planned for the next hotfix. Oh, wow. Some improvements to the system are planned for the next hotfix. That's great. When do we get the next part of the storyline? I loved it, but it's sort of a cliffhanger. You can't blame me for the cliffhanger. I forced Joel to cut the last... Oh, I'm sorry. You can blame me for the cliffhanger. I forced Joel to cut the last third of the storyline so we could actually launch the game. Act 3 will be released over the next year with new content added for free each time we release a DLC. Okay, this is exciting. New content added for free each time they release a DLC. I'm big on free content updates. My character's level 90, but I want to move siege or server to join a guild. Will you allow people to transfer between sieges or servers? Currently, we support you visiting other sieges on your current on your current world, and we'll be expanding on that feature pretty soon. Transferring to another world is much more complex, but we hope to add it in the future. Are there any plans to implement a way to change how your character looks, essentially accessing the character customization through some sort of cosmetic surgeon aid with Solari? Yes, this will be added in a future update. The team is already working on it, so expect some news soon when we start discussing our post-launch content releases. Fantastic. For those of you who love to adjust the way you look. I think we already read this one. What are you going to do to handle losing your ornithopter when you DC? We have already looked at that one. And will you add a feature to deposit leader johns into water cistern all at once? I think that's pretty much it. I think maybe we missed one or two, but I honestly don't want to go all the way through this another time. I feel like we've probably hit most of the big ones here. I'm probably going to take a couple of hours here. I'm going to go look through and find some of these questions that I think are the most important. Maybe do 5 or 10 of the most important questions and just put out a quick little video. Basically just doing what we did right here and reading them again. So we're going to end the stream, at least for now, at this point. I will be streaming again a little later today. I'm going to get on and play the game. But this is a lot of information and a lot of good information. And so I do want to go through and put out a little video on it. See if we can't drum up some viewership for the channel that way. So yeah, thanks everybody for coming out and listening to my humdrum voice as we went through the AMA here. I really like doing these live streams. Um, I think it's a lot of fun to read the AMAs and get on Reddit and just go through some of this stuff. So, yeah, I really appreciate the input. I really appreciate everybody hanging out. Thank you a lot. And I will see you all in a few hours when I get back on and start playing again and we do a actual play stream. So I will see you all then. Have a good day.